Where am I heading? I keep forgetting I'm in prison. Where am I? No idea. Last night on the television, I was on a telephone rapidly rising with I don't know. COVID has taken more than 100 years. Look, here's why reflected in the NHEI. America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him in the friggin' season. He'll be gotten gains of Putin's autocracy. Yeah. NATO's purpose is to defend against aggression. Let me make that near and dear to you that you like to be able to. Anyway, my mind's going blank now. What's happening? I can't remember. Lose track. My mind's going blank now. What are you talking about? What the hell's going on here? Where the hell are you? My mind's going blank now. I can't remember. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. What am I doing here? My mind's going blank now. Where am I heading? I keep forgetting I'm in prison. Where am I? No idea. I don't think as the idea that the political coverage of I want to thank and recognize Dr. John Kingersong. Good song. I can't get this food at all. My mind's going blank now. What's happening? I can't remember. Lose track. My mind's going blank now. What are you talking about? What the hell's going on here? Where the hell are you? My mind's going blank now. I can't remember. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. What am I doing here? My mind's going blank now. Where am I heading? I keep forgetting I'm in prison. Where am I? No idea. No idea. No idea. No idea. What's the song that is played where everybody is on the chair, everybody going to my mind's going blank now. What's happening? I can't remember. I'm gonna lose track. My mind's going blank now. What are you talking about? What the hell's going on here? Where the hell are you? My mind's going blank now. I can't remember. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. What am I doing here? My mind's going blank now. Where am I heading? I keep forgetting I'm in prison. Where am I? No idea. Last night on the television, I was on a telephone rapidly rising with I don't know. COVID has taken more than 100 years. Look, here's why reflected in the NHEI. America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him in the friggin' season. He'll be gotten gains of Putin's autocracy. Yeah. NATO's purpose is to defend against aggression. Let me make that near and dear to you that you like to be able to. Anyway, my mind's going blank now. What's happening? I can't remember. Lose track. My mind's going blank now. What are you talking about? What the hell's going on here? Where the hell are you? My mind's going blank now. I can't remember. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. What am I doing here? My mind's going blank now. Where am I heading? I keep forgetting I'm in prison. Where am I? No idea. I don't think as the idea that the political coverage of I want to thank and recognize Dr. John Kingersong. Good song. I can't get this food at all. My mind's going blank now. What's happening? I can't remember. Lose track. My mind's going blank now. What are you talking about? What the hell's going on here? Where the hell are you? My mind's going blank now. I can't remember. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. What am I doing here? My mind's going blank now. Where am I heading? I keep forgetting I'm in prison. Where am I? No idea. No idea. No idea. No idea. What's the song that is played where everybody is on the chair, everybody going to my mind's going blank now. What's happening? I can't remember. I'm gonna lose track. My mind's going blank now. What are you talking about? What the hell's going on here? Where the hell are you? My mind's going blank now. I can't remember. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. What am I doing here? My mind's going blank now. Where am I heading? I keep forgetting I'm in prison. Where am I? No idea. Last night on the television, I was on a telephone rapidly rising with I don't know. COVID has taken more than 100 years. Look, here's why reflected in the NHEI.
Hey, welcome to the show, Darth Snyder. Thank you for joining, but I'll make a quick comment on that before we get started. It didn't have, if you look at the electorate in California, I just did some posts about this the other day, so if you want to stay quick before you go, I know it's late where you are, but here's what happened. Republicans in California really shouldn't be celebrating the victories. I'm going to tell you why. Something terrible happened in California for both parties that is going to have real serious consequences in the future. Now, I think the Democrats are going to figure it out quicker than the Republicans, and I'll tell you why. So here, California is now a majority Latino state. I don't know how many people know that. But when you look at the ballot returns for California in the general election for November 2022, the electorate was 18% Latino in a state that is majority Latino. It was a 66% white electorate. So Latinos, despite all the bad things that the Democrats have done, all the chaos, right? They did not show up in 2022 general election. They rejected both parties. So they clearly are upset with the Democrats. That's a signal that they are making the switch from the Democratic Party. But then they looked at the platform the Republican Party was presenting, and they said, wait a minute, this isn't the Trump platform that was bringing us into the GOP, and they didn't vote for Republicans either. So they stayed home. And in a district like CA13, which is a 50% Latino district, the ballot return rates were as follows. It was I want to mess up the numbers. It was a 33 or 35% Latino electorate. Now remember, it's a 50% Latino district, and it was a 56% white electorate. So Latinos also didn't show up in CA13. And if you pay attention, if you pay attention to traditional conservative appeals to older white voters. So you can win in a year when the Latinos don't vote, because older white voters will go for that Mitt Romney type Republicanism. I mean, they will vote for that. But it's going to be a presidential year in 2024. And Democrats are going to look at the data and say, how the hell did we lose these seats? And see, when Democrats look at data, they don't pick and choose, because all the Democrats care about is winning. Winning consumes them because they want full power. So they're willing to look at reasons why they lost and accept the data point to them. They're going to look at it and see right away, crap, Latinos didn't vote for us. But then they're going to notice that Latinos also didn't vote for the Republican Party. And they're going to say, well, we have to make sure we go back to pandering to these communities like we had been in the past. We took them for granted. They're feeling like we don't care about them. We got to make sure we pander to them. Republicans, on the other hand, look at data and say, well, we won this race, that everything we did was right. That's wrong. They're going to ignore the fact that they won because Latinos didn't show up. They're going to think that they picked the establishment message is what's the future. That's what they're going to, they only take the information that they like from data, and they ignore information that they don't want to accept. So they're going to think because they won, they did everything right. But they actually would have won by more across the state if they could have motivated Latinos to come out and join the Republican Party, because they clearly were unsatisfied with the Democrats. It was a prime opportunity for Republicans, not just in California, but this happened in a lot of places across the country, even in those border counties in Texas. This was the time. And we gave them a platform that did not inspire them. Because I don't care how much the GOP elite wants to make excuses. The truth is simple. Okay? The truth is simple. Latinos love America First populism. They don't trust the old brand of republicanism. They think about financial collapse. They think about Mitt Romney. They don't trust that stuff. And and one of the things I want to do is we're working on something, but this is the thing. And this is another thing, Darth Snyder, good you brought this up, because we'll get into the main stuff later. The GOP is going to talk all about how they're going to ballot harvest and do this. We're going to learn the adjustments. I don't think they're going to get it done. I'm going to explain to you why this is a problem, Darth Snyder. Democrats have it much easier to be able to do this harvesting stuff, because Democrats have outside organizations that are actually willing to spend their own money to help Democratic candidates. So the party itself doesn't even have to pay to get harvesters out there. You have all these Soros-funded groups that are willing to do it on their dime. And whereas Republican donors and stuff aren't willing to put up the money for that. So Republicans are going to try and do it through the GOP We don't have those outside grassroots organizations that are going to do it. We need to get those. And that's something I want to work on. And the good thing about Latinos, obviously a lot of Republicans, even President Trump needs to stop telling them, don't get your ballots in. We need to bank votes. Listen, I do not like ballot harvesting. I do not like early voting. But those are the rules of the game right now. And you either live by those rules and win, or you ignore those rules and you die by them. And so we have to bank votes. And older, whiter Republican voters are really tough to get them to change and open up, especially when they hear the president say, oh, you got to vote in person on election day. But when you're telling people that, things like what happened in Arizona, do you think that was a coincidence the machines didn't work on election day? They knew Republicans were showing up on election day to vote. That's why they didn't have enough ink. We told them how to take us out. We need to bank votes. And unfortunately, older white Republican voters are the ones that are most hesitant to ballot harvest. Latinos, on the other hand, are much more open to it because the Democrats, at least here, I'll tell you what the Democrats do in this part of California. They literally will knock on your door. They go into the houses of these people and they literally say, here's who you're voting for. We're going to put their signs in your front yard. We're going to fill out your ballot and we're going to get it in. And then they fill out the whole family and they get it all in. If we can capitalize on that in a more respectable way, because the way they do it here is so disrespectful. They literally just barge in your house and they're like, oh, this is who you're voting for, blah, 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 blah. We're putting the sign in your yard and bing, bang, boom, we're gone. We need to go into these houses, sell them our vision. And when they say, yes, I want to support you, we say, okay, let's fill out the ballot. Would you have a problem if we fill out your ballot? And we need to start banking those votes. And we need to get them in areas where Democrats aren't expecting us to do stuff like that. So it's not as easy as just saying, oh, we're going to ballot harvest, we're going to do this. Democrats have a huge ground operation that they've been building for decades. Republicans don't have those outside grassroots organizations that are willing to put up their own money. And they don't have enough money like the Democrats because our donors aren't giving money to groups to do that kind of thing. We have to adapt. And unfortunately, I just don't think the top of the Republican Party is sincere in any of their efforts to do this because this has been going on for a while now and they haven't made the adjustments. I'm not surprised at what happened in the November elections because they knew what districts they had to focus on. And we talked about this in last episode or 2 episodes ago. Places like New York where the Republicans took back these seats, Democrats took those for granted. They didn't think they had to defend there. So those D plus 20 seats, they left them alone. Whereas all those competitive Cook political report seats, the Democrats took that list and said, this is where we need to put all our ground game harvesting operations. And they did it exceptionally well. And then we shot ourselves in the foot by the fact that they were able to bank just so many more votes before Election Day. Unfortunately, with the way the laws are nowadays, a lot of these elections are actually over by the time Election Day comes, and we don't even realize it because so many votes have been banked by the Democrats. And we have to just get better at that. We can't. Let me ask you this. Do you want to keep stressing on election night that you have to play catch up, that you have to hope that all your voters were able to get there in an 8-hour window, right? We don't want to keep doing that. Isn't it better to bank a lead and have to put them on their feet to make sure they get their voters to show up on Election Day? So, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Darth Snyder. But yeah, if you looked at CA13, that's exactly what happened. In a presidential year, it's going to be a problem. Because the Democrats are, especially, listen, Joe Biden, if you heard what Gavin Newsom said, he talked, I'm not going to run against Joe Biden. Don't listen to anything. That's because they know Joe Biden is not going to be on the ticket in 2024. Joe Biden will not be the Democratic nominee. He's going to be replaced with probably Gavin Newsom, a younger, more energetic Democrat that is going to really rile up the most progressive of their base. And in a place like California, they're going to try really hard to motivate Latinos to get out. And this is the thing. Latinos are on the fence right now. They don't like the Democrats, but they're not being given anything from the Republican Party that's really forced them to make the permanent switch. Outside of Trump, they don't trust Republicans. And you could actually get them without Trump, but you have to run on Trump's platform. And the top of the GOP clearly doesn't want to do that. So the Latinos are going to say, listen, well, then I guess I'm just going to go back to the Democrats because they're coming to my door again. So this is a really pivotal time, and quite frankly, I'm really concerned that the GOP is not going to make the necessary adjustments. They just don't show the willingness to look at the data. I mean, you could see the pundits already saying we got to get rid of Trumpism. That's why we lost. That's not why you lost. It's not. That's the last thing that happened. And the way the demographics of this country are changing, the working class voter is the new bread and butter coalition. You need them. You need them. They just don't like crony republicanism, Wall Street republicanism. And unfortunately, I don't know. I don't know what it's going to take. I mean, 2016 election, I saw Ronna McDaniel announce today that she is forming this advisory group. The voters of the American people gave the Republican Party all the advice they needed on election night in 2016. They said, this is how you win and build a permanent majority. And the GOP has spent the next six years saying, no, we like that you voted for us, but you're going to vote for us in our terms. You can't survive like that. So thanks for bringing that up. But today we're going to talk about getting into some stuff. I went to work really hard on this FTX thing, and I want to start off with that. Then we're going to talk about this COVID chaos in China. I'm going to bash a couple people that don't want to. Obviously, the president is an embarrassment. He will not criticize China. He'll go and criticize Iran, but he won't criticize China. Then we're going to talk a little bit about how they're trying to take out Elon Musk. I mean, you got companies. I've coined this phrase, and I haven't seen anyone else use it yet. But here it is. It's corporate fascism. You have big corporations, and we've talked about this. I don't know if you saw that episode, if anyone did. But you have big corporations now that are doing the bidding of the Democratic Party. And it's easier for them to get away with silencing speech and silencing people because when you go to the courts are going to say, well, it's a private company. They can do whatever they want, right? It's Apple's App Store. If they want to take an app out of the App Store, it's a private company. They can do that. Go and get your app in another store. The problem is there are no alternatives right now, no legitimate alternatives to things like the Apple and the Google store. And this is the problem with these big tech monopolies. We have to break them up. So we're going to talk about that. But let's get into the FTX thing because I actually, I was at my store on Saturday, and this FTX thing has got me all riled up. And I was there, and I was reading thing. I saw a post on Twitter, and I was like, well, obviously the story was how much money Sam Bankman-Fried gave to Democrats. But then I was like, this guy gave a ton of money to Kevin McCarthy, and nobody's talking about that. Kevin McCarthy is bought off by all of these people. We cannot allow him to become speaker. Nothing is going to, if Kevin McCarthy becomes speaker, he is going to turn off the people the GOP needs to win in the future. We are going to lose these people. All right? So I decided to take a look. I'm like, well, let me go see what Republicans took FTX money. And then I sat there. It took me like 2.5 hours. I went on, I don't know how many people realize this, but because people are always like, oh, where'd you get your data? How do you know this? You can go on fec.gov and you literally can see every political donation that's made to every candidate, every campaign. It has to be reported. Has to be. You can see who gives to PACs. You can see how PACs spend their money. So I went on there and I said, okay, let's see who all the FTX, not just Sam Bankman-Fried, because he got all the attention. Yeah, I don't know. Marjorie Taylor Greene pushing McCarthy makes me sick. Listen, you got me. You caught me that. So I want to tell you something about that because this argument, Jack Posobiec just said it too. Kevin doesn't have the votes. Kevin needs to do the right thing and realize the American people don't want him to be speaker. But he has such a lust for power that he is willing to go to the floor and force a vote that he doesn't have the votes to win and strong-arm people. And Posobiec just said, oh, we can't allow a Democrat to win. Well, how about this? How about Kevin does the right thing? I don't have the votes. I'm stepping aside. Let somebody else take that spot. I'm tired of the excuses for Kevin. And we'll talk more when we get in this FTX thing. So anyway, I went and I looked and I compiled this list of Republicans. And I posted it. And it took off. Yeah, it took off really quickly. And then everybody, I had some people immediately wanted answers, right? They were demanding, well, how come you didn't do the Democrats? Or how much money did they take? When did they take this money? Maybe they didn't know who they were getting the money from and what it was for. And, listen, let me tell you something. I'm going to go through some of the key findings that I found. One, why did I post Republicans first? I posted Republicans first because everybody was talking about how much money FTX execs gave to the Democrats. And we were kind of acting like, oh, the Democrats are the only ones in this corruption. And then you go and look and you realize, no, once it became widely assumed that Republicans were going to capture the House and maybe even the Senate, the FTX executives pivoted and they said, we got to give money to these people. We're under SEC investigation right now, right? So the party, if the Republicans are going to sweep Congress, we got to make sure we are in their good graces. So in October, Ryan David Salami, the guy on the right there in my little graphic, he went on a huge spending spree giving money to Republican candidates. And I want people to know, listen, I know the Democrats are corrupt. I know everything they're doing. I expect the worst from the Democrats. But we're going to sit here and count on the Republican Party to save us, right? That's what we voted for. We're saying, hey, you guys got to come in and stop the madness. But then I see they're actually in bed with the madness. So we need to expose that. So that's why I focused on the Republicans first. Okay? That's why. Because they are supposed to be the ones who are going to stop this. But they're just as dirty. A lot of them are just as dirty as the Democrats. And I needed to draw light to that because we have to demand answers. Kevin McCarthy's congressionally, this is the worst part about this. And so let's look at some of the data that I found. I mean, here, I got it here. Let me get the spreadsheet. Let me go here. I mean, let's sort it by party. So I can sort it by party. I mean, the Democrat ones are a lot of the same people you would expect. Let me get this a little bit so we can get a little more. Oh, hold on. We don't need the top crap. It's not really going to give us anything. Okay, so, I mean, a lot of the Democrats on the list are the usual suspects most of us would expect. Okay, and we know the FTX is very heavily involved in Ukraine. So, I mean, you got people like my buddy Jim Costa here. He's a lifetime swamper. So he was on there. He didn't surprise me. My old friend Jim Hines from my home state of Connecticut was on there. You got John Tester. The DCCC took close to $250,000. The House Majority PAC, which is Nancy Pelosi's PAC, they got $6 million. The Senate Majority PAC, which is, let me find that one, which is Chuck Schumer's PAC, they got $2.5 million. And then you had, the other people, Kristen Gillibrand, Josh Harder. He was a guy I thought I was running against for about 2 days. You had, Dick Durbin, Cory Booker, Chuck Schumer, all these people. But then I went and I looked at the Republicans. I said I focused on the Republicans more so in depth because it's very eye-opening. And the dates and the stuff is what matters. So let's first look at that. Hold on, sorry. Right. Let's first look at the dates when a lot of these donations came. I'll show you. Look at the dates where most of the Republicans got their donations. October 2022. After it was assumed, mid-October, early October, when it started to become apparent that Republicans were pulling away in the generic ballot, that's when the donations started coming in. Because the FTX executives knew they were under investigation. And now they're saying, oh crap, these people are going to have subpoena power. They are going to be able to control the flow of money. They're going to be able to do audits. They're going to be able to do this and that. And that's when they started giving money to the Republican Party. So for people to say, well, maybe they didn't know when they were getting the money, what the money was for. Guys, they know. When you get a max donation, you know who it's coming from. You know the person. They knew who these people were. All right, and their staffers knew who they were. If the candidate themselves didn't know the donation came in, you can bet your butt the chief of staff did, and that the campaign manager did. right? So the NRC, the National Republican Senatorial Committee, got 109,000. T. McConnell got 121,000. Kevin McCarthy's PAC got 2 million, right? And a lot of this is tied. Look at how all these Republicans voted for Ukraine. Only 5 Republicans who took money from FTX did not vote to continue funding the Ukraine war. And another thing that's really important about this, so some of the money that was given, here's another thing Tom Tillis took a ton of money, almost 700,000 from FTX execs during the primaries. What did he do with this money? He took stolen money from FTX, and he's the one who used it to destroy Madison Cawthorn. And Kevin McCarthy took this money and destroyed America First candidates with it. And many of the senators, Republican senators that got donations from FTX were Trump impeachers. All the Trump impeachers got money, or they were outspoken against Trump, like John Bozeman and John Thune. So the money was going to stop Trump supporting Republicans from getting that. The only time a Trump supporting challenger got money was in a seat where it looked like they might pull it off against an impeacher, which was like in the Anthony Gonzalez race in Ohio. Obviously, Max Miller was heavily favored to win, so they gave money to Max Miller. And I believe they did that. Kat Kamik got money, right? So Kat Kamik got money. She's a Freedom Caucus person. She got money. Those people got money to protect Kevin McCarthy's speakership. Because the FTX execs need Kevin McCarthy to become speaker. Because they gave him all this money. They've already bought him off. So how do you stop an investigation? How do you make sure you're not going to get in trouble? Well, the guy who's going to get the gavel, you got to make sure you get him over the finish line. That's what a lot of this is about. There are a lot of people that need Kevin McCarthy to become speaker because he's going to protect them. And if you look, another eye-opening thing is reason why this wasn't just, accidental donations. Look at the committees that these donations went to. The most powerful committees in Washington: Energy and Commerce, Appropriations. Everyone on both sides and both parties, the Appropriations Committee controls the flow of money. So everyone, Democrat and Republican on the Appropriations Committee, got FTX money. Ways and Means, one of the most powerful committees in the House. People on the Ways and Means Committee in both parties got the money. Foreign Affairs got the money. The Judiciary Committees, the Budget Committees, it went to those people. This was strategically planned. This was not a fluke, and the people were like, well, maybe nobody knew. It was all innocent. No. This was done. This did not happen by chance, right? And yeah, Ashton, John Thune is so corrupt. And so, this is the problem. So one of the things they were doing, most of their money, 99% of the money was spent on incumbents, right? Because you're going to spend the money on people you know are going to be in the next Congress. So they didn't give to challengers except in those few cases where they were going to knock off an incumbent and they wanted to make sure they got in their good graces, right? And there were a lot of surprising names on the list. Here's another thing that's crazy. So you had 5 congressmen who took money from FTX, sent a letter to the Security and Exchange Commission in March telling the SEC to stop investigating FTX. All 5 of those people took money. Tom Emmer, who now is going to be the whip, and who is responsible for the debacle that happened during the midterm. Tom Emmer got about, I think it was like $11,000. Let's find Tom Emmer, good old Tom. Good old Tom, who picks terrible candidates for House races and destroys good candidates. Refuses to give good candidates money and then blames them when they lose. Good old Tom Emmer. Let's find him. Tom Emmer, here he is. So Tom got about... He had more than this. I'm going to edit him because I'm pretty sure he was over the 80s. He got 8,700. Okay? So Tom Emmer got the 8,700. He signed the letter. Ted Budd, 2,900. But he didn't sign. No, he did sign the letter. He did sign the letter. That one's a surprising one. Do what you do can. I was surprised by that. I'm surprised by Ronnie Jackson. Ronnie Jackson got a lot of money to his PAC. His Jackson PAC got about $10,000. Another one who signed the letter, Democrat Josh Gottenheimer, Jake Onschloss, Democrat New Jersey, and Richie Torres. So these people took FTX money, and then they tried to stop the investigation. That's what this was about. Stopping investigations, right? And then Kat Kamek, who's a Freedom Caucus person. This is why I said a lot of it went to protecting McCarthy as Speaker. Kat Kamek, Freedom Caucus. Right now, the Freedom Caucus are the ones that are trying to stop McCarthy from becoming Speaker. How do you stop that? You get them on your side by promising them things or giving them money. Kat Kamek got money from FTX. She has now publicly supported McCarthy. Ronnie Jackson, instead of backing Andy Biggs or anyone else, someone else like Matt Gaetz or Jim Jordan for Speaker, he got over $10,000 from FTX. He's backing McCarthy. Elise Stefanik took money. Caroline Leavitt got it in New Hampshire, which was very interesting. They thought she was going to win. Now, the other surprising names are Blake Masters, J.D. Vance, Adam Laxalt. They showed up on the list. I'm not as surprised by that, and I'll tell you why. I don't think it's really because it was, we're going to get these crowd. They thought they were going to win Senate seats, and the Senate is a much more powerful chamber, right? So if you're thinking that they're going to take out incumbents that are probably already on your payroll, right? So those incumbents that Masters, Vance, and Laxalt were going to be were already on FTX exec's payroll. If you thought they're going to get out, you got to make sure you have as many you earn as much good grace with senators as possible, right? So you can go back when the Senate decides they want to investigate. If Republicans had taken control of the Senate and they wanted to investigate FTX, you could go back to J.D. Vance, like, oh, look, we gave you a max donation. Can't you just, not do this to us? So those donations came in very late in October or after the primaries and when those people started pulling away in their races and it looked like they were going to win. And that makes a lot of sense. You need as many senators on your side as possible. And that's why, I'm really angry about what happened through this whole saga, okay? Because look at the coverage that FTX is getting. There's been no indication right now that FTX executives are going to face real justice. None. If anything, you're getting all these puff pieces written in the media, which is disgusting. I see them, what they're saying about these people. It's ridiculous. These guys should already be in jail. Bernie Madoff is rolling over in his grave thinking, why the heck didn't I get the treatment these people are getting? Bernie, maybe you should have paid off both sides. So this is the part that's making me angry. People lost money. This is stolen money. This is what's wrong with politics. Everybody wants to talk about money doesn't always matter. Money does matter a lot in races. And a lot of people are going to criticize, Blake Masters. So I've been getting with arguments with people all week. Well, Doug Mastriano lost in Pennsylvania. How could he do that if they love Trump? Doug Mastriano was outspent by $40 million. Sometimes a good candidate can overcome money being used against them. But when it's in that level, it's really hard because a lot of voters are not like you and me. They're not sitting on a Tuesday night watching David Giglio from Madera, California talk about politics. A lot of Americans are very busy. They don't focus on politics. And unfortunately, a lot of Americans don't care about politics. They're casual. They pay attention casually to politics. And what they do pay attention to is what they read in the paper, what they see on the television, and what they read online. So when you are facing an opponent who is outspending you by tens of millions of dollars, even $1 million in a smaller market, a race like mine, where it was a smaller congressional race, and we were outspent, Kevin funneled over $1 million to our opponent. It's really hard to get your message out because people are going to make their last-second decisions, and they're going to base their decisions off of what they see in the media. And if you don't have the money to match the onslaught, you're not going to be able to combat the negative things you're getting that are being said about you. And in terms of Carrie Lake and Doug Mastriano, you had Republican organizations that were hitting them, spending millions to take them out. So not only were the Democrats outspending, were outspending Carrie Lake and Doug Mastriano, their own team was sabotaging them. You could be the best candidate in the world. That is nearly impossible to overcome. right? And I'm not saying Doug Mastriano was the best candidate, but I don't think Doug ran as bad a campaign as people are thinking, all right? Doug, he did talk too much about 2020, but when he was posting and when he was on the trail, he did talk a lot about the issues that mattered. The problem is he couldn't get his policy proposals about crime, education out to enough people because he didn't have the money to match. Being outspent by $40 million is killer. And Republican leadership knows this. That's why they didn't fund the candidates. The candidates that are the MAGA candidates that are being blamed for losing races were not given money. They were left out to dry, or left to be heavily outspent. Joe Kent's another one. People are blaming you. How could you lose a Trump seat? Well, Joe Kent got $0 from Kevin McCarthy, got $0 from the NRCC, was given $0 from the Congressional Leadership Fund. He was facing Democrats who give money to everyone. He got outspent by over $1 million. Not only that, during the primary, his own team was sending out mailers telling voters in Washington 3 that Joe Kent was basically Adolf Hitler. They had his picture with Bernie Sanders with Adolf Hitler. So you damaged your candidate already, and then you left him out to dry in the money game during the general. This kind of thing matters. You can blame MAGA all you want, but that's not really what's going on. So and there's another thing. So here, there's another, I wanted to show you quick back on. Let me pivot back to, so I do want to tell you, because there are people when they talk about FTX, because I've had people that aren't understanding, because a lot of the attention has been paid to Sam Bankman-Fried. So they're going to say, oh, well, that's pittance in comparison to what the Democrats receive. So Sam Bankman-Fried is the one who is the face of all this. He's the one with the hair there, He was the one who gave to Democrats. So yes, he did give 90% of his money to Democrats. It was the other executive, Ryan David Salami, who was tasked with giving the money to the Republicans. So in total, you can see here, Republicans were given, Democrats got 41 million of FTX money, Republicans got 21 million. Like I said, most of the money to Republicans came when it was assumed they were going to take power. So they weren't going to give to Republicans until they thought, wait, we might need these people to help save our skin from this SEC investigation and for a likely congressional investigation. So they did give twice as much money to Democrats, but the money was coming into Republicans at a time where it's clear this money was being given for a purpose. And that's to stop them from getting in trouble. Okay? And like I said, the most powerful committees that control the investigations, that can really take these people out and hold them accountable, are the ones who are given the money. That didn't happen by chance. So this situation, we cannot let it die. This is the swamp. This is what we've been talking about. If you want real change, right, we got to start electing people and holding people accountable for their bad actions. These Republicans should have to answer for why they took this money. None of them have said anything. There have been two people that have given the money. They both donated to charity. It was Kevin Hearn, Republican. I believe that's his name. And I think it was Chuy Garcia. It was Kevin Hearn and one of the Democrats are the only two people that gave the money back. Everyone should give the money back or donate it to charity, because if you give it back, I mean, you don't want to give it back to the FTX. The money should be taken, put in a special fund, and used to reimburse some of the victims. That's what should be happening here. But these people, these politicians, are trying to make this story die. And we cannot allow that to happen. And that's why I'm so focused on it. And I focused first on the Republicans because this is the side we're counting on to save this country. And some of them are just as bought off and just as corrupt as the Democrats. I keep telling people, I have had people, I don't want to get into too much specifics because, I don't want to keep bragging on the guy or anything. Well, I do, but I don't want to at the same time. But, we need more good people in politics. And I cannot support candidates that I personally would not vote for. How can you expect somebody, you're telling people, hey, you should support this guy or this guy. Listen, I will never tell a person to vote for somebody that I myself don't trust and somebody that I know is going to behave poorly and is going to be corrupt or is going to do this kind of stuff. We have to look at the kind of people we are electing to office. Politics by nature attracts the most corrupt, the most power hungry, the most narcissistic people among us. Of course it does. You get a lot of power from being in politics. So we have to start evaluating the true character and the hearts of the people we're electing. And that's why I think it's important that maybe we elect some average Joes. Some real outsiders, because everybody says they're an outsider right now. You're not an outsider if you were working in a previous administration or in some federal bureaucracy or some federal agency. You're not an outsider. An outsider is somebody who works every day and then decides, I'm going to enter into politics. A guy who owns a small business, has never worked for anything, runs for Congress. That's an outsider. A teacher who gets up and tries to run, that's an outsider. Everybody throws around the term outsider. It means nothing anymore. Very few are actual outsiders. And this is why they want to crush outsiders so much, because outsiders aren't beholden to the donors. Guys, when you take money from somebody, especially huge amounts of money, right? When somebody gets a super PAC and it's funneled in with tens of millions of dollars, those monies comes with strings that people expect you to do it. And that's why we do need campaign finance reform, because I believe the majority of money donated to members of Congress should have to come from within their own district. Because you in Congress are elected not to represent, you're elected to represent the people of your district and their needs and their desires, right? So we deserve campaign finance reform that makes that a reality, because most of these people, especially once they're incumbents, raise nowhere near the money from their own district. A guy like Jim Costa, who was on that list, all his money comes from DC and outside organizations. And he uses it to crush opponents, smaller, less funded opponents. So one of my campaign finance ideas was that you should only be allowed to raise an equal, so first quarter of your run, you have to raise all your money from within your district. Then once the second quarter comes around, you could only raise as much money from outside your district as you raised from within your district in the preceding quarter. This is going to force people to have to come home and spend time in their districts because they have to raise money from their own constituents. And this is something progressives and populists can work together on. Conservative populists should work together on. They should. A lot of people are both going to be on teams, but we have to get through this kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, I was really shocked by how much the Post took off, so I wanted to start with that. Now I want to get into what's happening in China, because I mean, if you're paying attention, a lot of you guys are. Listen, I say this a lot, and I used to talk about this when I was teaching and stuff. We were fooled into thinking that the Cold War ended when the Berlin Wall came down and when the Soviet Union collapsed, right? Because at the time, the Soviet Union was the most powerful communist empire. And American people got into this false sense of security that we had won the war. Well, we didn't actually win the war. The communists didn't just give up. They went and they reassessed what happened. And they've taken over, they built up China to the point where it is now. They went and they infiltrated education. So there was, if you learn about, let me take a drink because my throat's got something in it. One of the things, if you learn about critical race theory, it's off critical theory. So one of the things, if you, I forget I think he was a German philosopher, German communist philosopher, okay? And the communists were when they were taking over the Soviet Union, places like China, places like Cuba, they were struggling to figure out why they were able to spread communism in Europe with success, but they weren't able to spread it in the United States. Because at the time, the U.S. had the biggest blue-collar working class. The factories were open. that's where blue collar workers were. They were in the United States. And so the communists were saying to themselves, well, how come you have this country where there's the majority of these working class voters? We can't get our platform, which is specifically designed to engage them. Why can't we get them to turn? And they figured out, well, how do we do that? We got to get into education. We got to get into them when they're younger. We have to infiltrate education systems, government systems. Here's something that you have to understand. We want to do revisionist history. His name is synonymous with evil and targeting innocent people. But the truth is, Joseph McCarthy, Senator Joseph McCarthy from Wisconsin, was right. The communists had infiltrated our government back in the 50s and the 60s. And he was pointing them out, and they took him out. And everybody just said, oh, he was full of crap. There wasn't there. It's worse now. So this is what happened. The battlefield changed. It went from out in your front Cold War, out in your face Cold War, to behind the scenes. And we're sleeping because we thought we won. But they're here, infiltrated our schools, getting our children at a young age, obviously taking over our colleges, taking positions in the federal bureaucracy. And I think it's far worse. And at the time, and what they realized too, is one of the things that took out to stop them during McCarthy was that the FBI at the time was Joseph McCarthy was getting his information from the FBI. So the FBI was aware that the communists had infiltrated, and the FBI at the time was upset. J. Edgar Hoover was angry that politicians, President Truman, and after him, Truman, who else? Truman, then you had Kennedy, Nixon. So anyway, Hoover was mad that he was giving this information to the U.S. presidents, FDR, telling them about this communist infiltration, and they weren't doing anything. They were ignoring him. And so he gave a lot of the info to Joseph McCarthy so McCarthy could get it out to the public. And then they took out McCarthy. So the communists realized, well, wait a minute. We're never going to be able to win if the FBI is going after us. They have infiltrated every part of our government. And so what's happening in China right now shows us this battle. You have, our government. So basically, if you're not paying attention, what's happening in China, they're back with their zero COVID policy, okay? Which is basically, you get COVID, we're going to lock you in a camp, we're going to lock you in your house. What we know about COVID right now, first of all, it's a virus with a 99.8% survival rate. I'm not saying COVID isn't serious. It is serious for some people. But when in human history has this happened? You're locking people in their apartments for a virus. This isn't about a virus. This is about control. And now what you're starting to get out of China is the people aren't just upset about these COVID lockdowns. They're upset with communism. They're in the streets demanding an end to the Communist Party. And right now the precedent is being set that we can use a virus to take control. So let's look at, I want to show you a little video about what's happening in China. So what the Chinese are doing, here, let's see this.
This is not just a COVID protest, and I know a lot of media reports will tell you it is. That may have been the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back, and people came out because of that. But what we're hearing on the streets of China is for President Xi to step down. They're calling for an end to communism. This is a much bigger movement than what we're seeing in terms of just a COVID protest.
So what's interesting is President Biden just recently, a week or two ago, recommitted to this sort of one China policy. So does that mean that we, the United States, not going to really do much to help these citizens who are, to your point, seeking freedom?
Right. Well, the Biden administration, in terms of its foreign policy, has always had this pick and choose kind of buffet where it comes to human rights, right? So we may see these movements on the street. We may see a lot of brutality on the streets, just like we're seeing in the Iran movements. But that's not part of their foreign policy. The Biden foreign policy, when he came in, even as a candidate, it was very similar to the Obama foreign policy, a lot of appeasement. But
so this is not just about COVID. So let me show you what they're doing here. So they're building these camps, dude. I mean, this is one. Look at that. It's freezing. There's not even any heat. They're building camps for tens of thousands of people just for having a virus, and they're locking them in here. And obviously, many were probably dying in these camps. Here's another one that they're building. Look at this massive camp. So they're taking people that have COVID. Oh my God, you have COVID. They're forcing you to take a test, and then they're putting you in these camps if you test positive. Okay? Even what they did, let's show you what else they did. There was a fire. They're locking people in their apartments. They're actually welding apartments shut. And what's disgusting about this, here's what the Biden administration had to say about what's going on in China. If you don't think that our government has been compromised and that our politicians are owned by China, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, all this talk we've spent for years about Russia, 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 you know, China is our enemy. We are at war. We are at war with the Communist Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party. They are our enemy. They are their own people's enemy. The problem is they are using their money, buying off our politicians not to attack them. So Joe Biden, when Iran was cracking down on their protesters, well, the Iranian regime isn't giving money to American politicians. The Iranian regime hasn't bought off Joe Biden and the Biden family. So they had no problem criticizing them. But when China acts in this way, crickets or a weak response. Where's LeBron James? He said nothing. So when the U.S. does something LeBron James doesn't like, he's out there criticizing. But he is making money in China off his sneakers and his basketball deals. He won't say anything. Here's what the Biden admin said. We've said that zero COVID is not a policy we're pursuing here in the United States. Well, first of all, I mean, why does that even need to be said? Because it's a completely insane policy that should never be implemented. So the fact that they even led with that is crazy. Then they go on to say, and as we said, we think it's going to be very difficult for the People's Republic of China to contain this virus through their zero COVID strategy. Duh! It's not possible. It's a virus. It's going to spread. There's no such thing as zero COVID policy. It's like we're watching, you ever see the movie, the zombie movie 27 weeks later, and then 27 days later and 28 weeks later? They tried that. It's like, it's an illogical policy. It'll never work. For us, we are focused on what works, and that means using the public health tools like continuing to enhance vaccine rates, including boosters, and making testing and treatment easily accessible as policy. We've long said everyone has the right to peacefully protest here in the United States and around the world. This includes the People's Republic of China. This is one of the most weak, ridiculous, cowardly statements ever. This is coming from the President of the United States. The United States is the beacon of freedom, and this is the kind of response we get from the president. He was asked about this. They were asked about this during the press briefings. Let's see what he said.
I'm wondering, what is the president's reaction when he hears protesters in China chant freedom or Xi Jinping step down?
The president's not going to speak for protesters around the world. They're speaking for themselves.
So the president's not going to speak for protesters around the world. Isn't the U.S. supposed to speak up for freedom? If Donald Trump didn't say anything, they'd be going crazy. Why isn't Donald Trump saying anything about what China's doing? Any Republican. We're supposed to be leading the charge for freedom, the global quest for freedom. The United States president should speak up. This is ridiculous. So you won't speak up for the Chinese people because you don't want to hurt President Xi's feelings? Because you want to keep getting money? You politicians want to keep getting money? Unacceptable. Then, I want to show you this. Look at what else is happening. I mean, look at what they're doing to these people in the streets. I want to show you this. This is a drone. They literally have... This is a police drone flying around. They're yelling out on the speakers, stay in your houses or you will be arrested and you will be thrown in jail or into a camp. Okay? Then this is what they're doing on the streets. What about this is public health? What is it? There's another one.
Aí eu acho.
This guy's got a crowbar. He's beating this guy with a crowbar. I mean, and then you have the audacity of Nancy Pelosi. This is what Nancy Pelosi had to say about China just a couple months ago.
We still support the one China policy. We go there to acknowledge the status quo is what our policy is. There was nothing disruptive about that. It was only about saying China is one of the freest societies in the world. Don't take.
China's one of the freest societies in the world. Can you believe this? And here's Joe Biden's long history on China since he's been bought off.
China is not our enemy.
I believe then, and I'm even more convinced now, that a rising China is an incredibly positive development for not only China, but the United States and the rest of the world. It is in our self-interest that China continue to prosper.
China's a great nation, and we should hope for the continued expansion.
We want to see China rise. A rising China can be a significant asset for the region and the world.
No, a rising China could be a significant asset for corrupt politicians' bank accounts. That's why they want China to rise. That's why. And then you had Fauci. Look at what this guy, he's going to be our biggest L for the week, by the way. We're going to get to him. Look at what Fauci had to say about these Chinese protesters on CNN. This is ridiculous. Listen to this guy. This guy is a mad scientist. All the data that we now know has refuted everything Anthony Fauci has said for 3 years, and yet he is tripling down on it. He is completely, he's a lunatic.
China's official news agency today published an op-ed asserting that the country's strict COVID measures are scientific and effective. Are they?
Well, when you want to shut down in order to interrupt immediately a process that's going on like the spread of infection, there should be a purpose to it. Like you want to make sure you get enough ventilators or enough PPE, or you want to get your population vaccinated. The comment that I made about their severe actions that they've taken is that you have to have an end game. What's the purpose? If the purpose is let's get all the people vaccinated, particularly the elderly, then okay for a temporary period of time to do that.
So
but
Anthony
they have
Fauci,
very
people like who gives advice to the Biden administration and controlled COVID policy for 3 years now. If we want to get people vaccinated, it's okay to throw you in a concentration camp. It's okay to beat the hell out of you in the middle of the street and drag you off into an unmarked van because we got to get elderly people vaccinated. Well, do we? Because now we know the vaccine is killing people. And he's still doing that. It's this kind of stuff is truly, it's mind-boggling. It's absolutely, it's out of control. It's mind-boggling. So, before we get into some questions and answers, if anyone has any, I will go to the biggest L for the week. The biggest L is Anthony Fauci, who testified under oath, and all he was saying is, I can't recall, I haven't seen that. He couldn't even name a single study that showed masks worked. Under oath, he couldn't name a single study. Couldn't name about the lab leak theory. So he spent 2 years telling you the lab leak theory was a lie, right? Now he's acknowledging, well, maybe it did leak from the lab, but it wasn't from my funding. How do you know that, Anthony? How do you know that? Let's see what he had to say about that.
Republicans are taking over the House of Representatives, which means there's going to be a lot of oversight hearings. Earlier in the program, we heard from the soon-to-be chairman of the Oversight Committee. And obviously, they're going to hold hearings on the origins of COVID. You have said that you think that it is likely that it was a natural development from animal to human, but that your mind is open about it possibly being from a lab leak. And the investigation is going to be about specifically whether there's any connection, if there was a lab leak, to U.S. investments in virus research at the Wuhan lab. It's possible, right? I mean,
well, it's possible that there's a lab leak, but if you look at the viruses that the NIH funded, and it was a very small grant, $120,000, $130,000 a year, granting to study bat viruses in a surveillance way to see what's out there. If you look at those viruses and you look at what was done with the viruses, it would be essentially molecularly impossible for those viruses to turn into SARS-CoV-2 because they were so evolutionarily distant that I can't tell you what's going on in all of China and in other things, but I can tell you for sure that if you look at the viruses that the NIH grant funded to study in a surveillance way, anybody who even has a peripheral understanding of evolutionary virology will tell you these viruses could not possibly turn into SARS-CoV-2. So when you talk about a leak...
So I can't listen to him anymore. The guy is a criminal. He should have his medical license revoked. There is no way he should be getting paid any of his pension. The harm and the damage that this man has caused, not just in the United States, but helped cause around the world based on lies. It's an evil that's unfathomable. It's unfathomable that he is still being given a pulpit. And Jake Tapper just sat there, didn't push back. Journalism is dead in this country. These people are hacks. He is still spewing things we now know are blatant lies. And when he has to do it under oath, of course, the media didn't cover the fact that under oath, he couldn't name a study that said masks worked. He couldn't answer any of the questions. He couldn't recall things that he had said publicly. Now he was just there saying that maybe we need to lock down schools again. They asked him on CNN too, do you think that parents should expect schools to be locked down in December and January? And he was like, well, I don't know yet. After everything we know about the damage caused by school closures, this man still cannot say, no, we should not close schools again. He knows there's no scientific basis for closing schools. There wasn't in the first place, and there isn't now, and yet he still is open to the idea and pushing that nonsense. It's criminal. It's downright criminal. And I don't want just investigations, because the Republican Party has long been the party of investigations and sound bites and sound clips. It's time to put people, held them responsible. Charges, if they've done something truly evil, go to jail. Democrats will put you in jail. Republicans will have an investigation, get a soundbite, and send out a fundraising email. That's why these people are so emboldened. They have never had to face consequences, and it's time that we show them enough is enough. We are going to fight fire with fire, and we are going to dish it out as hard as you dish it out. Until we do that, they are going to keep doing it. They know Republicans are taking control of the House, and they're not scared. Why? Because Kevin McCarthy's bought off, and he's not going to do crap besides read the Constitution aloud on the floor of the House of Representatives. Kevin, nobody elected Republicans for you to read. As much as I like to read the Constitution, that's not what you're supposed to be doing. They know the Republican Party is led by unserious people. These are serious times. We cannot afford to have unserious leaders. Kevin McCarthy, Mitch McConnell, Ron McDaniel are not the people to lead the new Republican Party. They are not the ones that are going to show the Democrats that we mean business. All they're going to do is have political gamesmanship, and then they're going to take their clips and they're going to send out fundraising emails. So that's the week's biggest L. So before we go, I'd like to take some questions and answers. Last week we had a decent amount. If anybody has any, I'd love to take some again. Otherwise, we'll call it a wrap, and I will not be on next week. I have a newborn son. His name's Brooks. You might have seen some pictures I posted of him, but we're actually taking him to see my parents. So won't be on next week's show. But if anyone has any, questions, I'd love to field them. Otherwise, we'll head out. I'm glad Darcy in the beginning let me talk a little bit about CA13, because all these people celebrating and these teenage election keyboard warriors on Twitter are ignoring the most important part of the data. An old white electorate in a 50% Latino district is going to win right now. But when Latinos do get re-engaged, because the Democrats are going to recognize that Latinos didn't show up for them. They know they're bleeding with Latinos. The problem is, not just in California. California was the most egregious example because it's a majority Latino state. But even across the country, Latinos didn't go to the Republican Party. This has been the problem. Trump, go ahead, Ashton. Shoot me your question. Fire away if you got it. I'll keep talking until you type it. But what was I saying again? I don't know. Bash on Kevin. Something. Spurs buying Latin radio stations. Yeah, I mean, you know, this is the thing. So yeah, so there we go. I was talking about Latinos. So Latinos voted for Trump, right? They like Trump's platform. And this is the thing people don't understand when you talk about America First. America First doesn't have to be Trump. It's the platform. Trump gave you the formula to win. That was the lesson of 2016. Trumpism is populism. Okay? It's the platform. In some cases, separate the platform from the man. That's the winning formula. Latinos want, but they need to believe that the Republicans are going to embrace that. And there's nothing showing Republicans are going to, because the people atop the GOP don't really want to represent those voters. They like being the party of Wall Street. But they're never going to win with that. Latino voters are not going to show up. They didn't show up in 2020. So the GOP Kevin McCarthy, Mitch McConnell, Ronna McDaniel, all these people are conspiring to keep Trump off the ticket in 2024. Well, look what happens when Trump isn't on the ticket and you don't run on his message. Latinos don't embrace the Republican Party. So be careful what you wish for, because if Trump's not atop the ticket in 2024 and you continue to stifle Trumpism and his populist message, they're going to stay home again. But in 2024, in a presidential year, they're going to vote Democrat. It could be a huge blue wave year. I have to look a lot about that. In the past, I really liked Hermie. I got to look more into that. It's tough, man. I mean, it's really hard because, like I said, we're going to have to start taking some initiative on our own. And that's one of the things I plan to try and do in my next step, is that we need grassroots organizations that are going to do the work for us, like the Democrats have. We cannot rely on the RNC to create this ballot harvesting operation, because the DNC doesn't really have it either. But like I said, what the DNC does have is the fact that Soros is out there funding groups that will do this ballot harvesting stuff on behalf of the DNC. So we can't just rely on the RNC to come up and harvest ballots, because they're not going to do it. And they're not going to target the voters because they don't expect those voters to even vote for them. So that's why we need to count on other groups forming, and that's something that I want to focus on. Do you think MAGA House candidates and Trump need to work on a better ground game to make sure they get stronger? Yeah, well, I mean, one of the problems is, obviously, this is the thing that bothers me, and everybody wants to say that, oh, you're 100% with Trump. I have a lot of concerns about Trump 2024 because right now the president isn't showing me that he's really learned. His biggest flaw when he was in office was the people he was listening to and taking advice from. And by sticking with people like Kevin McCarthy and Ronna McDaniel, it's a major red flag to me, because you're showing me that you haven't learned the most valuable lesson. They're whispering sweet nothings in your ear, but behind your back, they're stabbing you. So the hardest thing for MAGA House candidates is the fact that the people that Kevin McCarthy controls the flow of money to the NRCC. Kevin McCarthy controls basically everything. So if Kevin McCarthy himself doesn't believe in America First, which he doesn't, he could tweet it all he wants and talk about it. He's a shyster. He's a used car salesman. The problem is he's spending his money to destroy MAGA candidates. And the money game is important, guys. I can't stress this enough. When you are, and in many cases, he denies money. Like in my race, they went around and told Republican donors that admitted, they called this up. They told other candidates they wanted to give us the max donations, and the NRCC called them and told them no. So not only are they helping raise money and giving money to establishment anti-America First candidates, they're actively telling donors not to donate to MAGA candidates. And then these MAGA candidates, people are bashing them saying you can't raise money. You can't raise money because people are being told not to give you money. It's really hard to raise a lot of money from small dollar donors in congressional races. So this is the problem. How do we get them out? We have to get rid. We got to cut the head of the snake off. And right now, the problem is the people that control picking the candidates, funding the candidates, do not believe in President Trump's message. And right now, they don't like President Trump. And if he continues to stick with them, it's a major red flag and it's a big concern. Because why would someone like me, someone like Joe Kent, want to run again, knowing that you got destroyed because you were loyal to the president and you believed in his America First policies, but then you were left out to dry? People are not going to step up and run again because it sucks to get crushed. And so I pray that President Trump understands that there is nothing that Kevin McCarthy, he can whisper everything. His money means nothing. When the money that he raises is being used against you, it doesn't matter how much he raises. What concessions could the Freedom Caucus get from McCarthy? Okay. Listen, McCarthy's going to promise things. He's just not going to deliver on them. So they're going to get concessions that they're going to brag about. Like, I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene is bragging about, oh, Kevin is going to use the Holmes Act to stop funding of the special counsel. It's not going to happen. That's why I vote for him, she said. Not going to happen. He'll promise in you. It's not going to happen. I'll tell you right now, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I don't necessarily, Sabrina, I get your point. You said, I love Trump, but he's too easy to manipulate because he believes. I don't necessarily think that's the problem. I think it's an asset here. I'll tell you what I think the problem is. Trump, I'm going to go back in history and tell you something. So everybody knows, I'm assuming here knows who Ulysses S. Grant was. Ulysses S. Grant was the Union general that turned the tides of the Civil War, became president. So Ulysses S. Grant had a terrible time as president because it was actually his administration ended up being one of the most corrupt administrations in United States history. So as a general, Ulysses S. Grant was used to the fact that when he told a subordinate officer to do something, it got done, right? Because that's how things work in the military. When the general tells you to do something, you do it. And so he appointed his friends to political positions, assuming that it was going to be just like it was when he was in the Army. He was going to tell them what to do, and he didn't need to police them. So he appointed these people to offices, powerful cabinet positions, and he took a hands-off approach and said, okay, well, I told them what they need to do, and they're going to do it, and I don't have to stand over their shoulder. And then what happened was, once you get in the political world, greed takes over, right? Lobbyists, everybody wants to make money. So he wasn't watching them thinking they were doing what he was telling them to do, and they were stealing money and doing illegal things. I think Trump's business background, the one part of it that hurts him is that he's used to being the CEO of a company. He tells somebody to do something, they're loyal to him. He mistakenly believed that just because he won in 2016 and gave Republicans a historic victory, killed the Clinton dynasty, that these people that opposed him the entire time were going to really, truly embrace him. But that's not what happened. They're used car salesmen. They're shysters. They whispered sweet nothings. They pretended to truly embrace him, but they spent the first 2 years of administration sabotaging him behind his back. And I think he just, at times, is very loyal to these people, and it comes back to bite him because he mistakenly believes that they are going to do what they say they're going to do and that they're not going to stab him in the back. And a lot of that comes from being at the top of a business. So I hope that his historical analogy makes sense. And yeah, Ashton, I wish they donated anyway, but unfortunately, it sucks. Yeah, I mean, listen, that's why, some people say I look bitter on Twitter. People have to understand. I don't like when people make judgments about a situation they don't understand what went on here. We didn't run a so-called extremist campaign. We focused on the issues. We went directly to the voters. It didn't matter to these people. They didn't want me to win anyway because all Kevin McCarthy cared about was votes for Speaker. That's what this was about. If you don't think for a second the majority Kevin got is the one he wanted, I can't tell you how wrong you are. Okay? Because a large majority would have meant that a lot of America First candidates got through and they were going to challenge Kevin, right? So it's better to have a small majority that you can control rather than have a huge wave election filled with America First MAGA candidates because they're going to take you down. So Kevin mistakenly believed if he gets a small majority, he's safe. Now he's finding people are pissed. They've caught on to his act. I hope it's enough. So I'm going to let you guys go for the night. I appreciate you guys watching in. I love the questions. Listen, tell your friends to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Spread the word. I'm just, trying to stay involved, and I'm trying to just help people. So, did they ever stop bothering you to endorse your opponent? I think they kind of figured out, before I go, Ashton, I think they kind of figured out at the end that I wasn't going to do it. I had to think, Ashton, I will make this point. I said this a little while ago. I'll say it again. I can't go out and tell people. There's things I know about my opponent that make me say, I can't tell people to vote for this person. And there's things they said and did to me that I can't ever forget. So, in good conscience, I can't tell people to vote for somebody that I don't trust and that I know is corrupt. So, I could have swallowed my pride and played their little game for a seat at the table. But like I said, people, it's cliche a little bit, but I never entered politics for power. I wanted to change this country. I wanted to deliver for people in this country. I wanted to show the American people that we can elect people that want to get things done, that want to break the status quo. But unfortunately, the people in power want to preserve the status quo because there's a lot of money to be made from the status quo. And they don't want people like me who are going to step on their toes. That's why they got rid of Madison Cawthorn. That's why Tom Tillis took $700,000 of FTX money and took out Madison Cawthorn. That's why they don't like Matt Gaetz. They don't like more rabble-rousers. They don't want these type of people. That's why they didn't like Trump, because he came in and he wasn't beholden to anybody. And he did try to do what he said he was going to do on the campaign trail. And they said, wait a minute, don't you understand how the political game works? In politics, we make promises to win elections, and then we don't deliver on them, so we can use those same promises in the next election to win those elections. But Trump said, screw that, I'm going to actually do these things. And they said, well, that's not how this works, buddy, and we're not going to allow that. So thank you very much. I hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving. I will see you not next week. I'll be back the week after that. We're heading into the Christmas season. Stay strong, guys. It's crazy out there, but this country is the greatest country on earth. Unfortunately, it is run by a lot of bad people. We have to keep fighting, keep pushing through. So God bless you all, and thanks for joining me.
What's the song that is played where everybody is on the chair, everybody, going to, my mind's going blank now. What's